This unit, we're going to begin talking about the U.S. labor force, labor unions, organized labor, and their effects on jobs, your life, so on and so forth. So first thing we're going to talk about the civilian labor force. The civilian labor force or labor force is defined as all people who are 16 years of age or older and who are currently employed or are actively seeking work. So that would be obviously many of you. Many of you may be already employed at 17, 18 years old, and maybe even actively seeking work. So you'd be considered in the labor force. There's a good figure in your book on page 308 that kind of talks about the civilian labor force and the armed forces and how much would not be in the labor force. A few jobs that are not considered in the labor force: homemakers, people that live at home and work from home, take care of kids, and not necessarily have a job other than that. Retired are not in the labor force. Those that are in school, such as college children, and disabled. So those are just a few that are not in the labor force. Historically, our labor force has shifted from one sector to another. We started off as an agricultural-based society, where most of the people were working obviously in the fields. Then during the Industrial Revolution, you have people move from the fields and the farms to the towns, where they're looking for manufacturing and construction. And that really stayed that way until probably the late maybe 60s, 70s, where we started getting more into the services, such as retailing, insurance, entertainment, healthcare. You really started to see a big boom in that. Maybe even in the 70s, your manufacturing is still good. So again, our economy has shifted from that one sector to another, and that affects our labor force as well. So I want to define some different things here. Blue-collar workers, maybe you've ever heard of that you're a blue-collar worker. Well, that's somebody that's employed in crafts, manufacturing, and non-farm labor. White-collar workers, these are people that are employed in offices, sales, or professional positions. Engineers would be a white-collar worker. Service workers are those that provide services directly to individuals. Haircuts, food service, childcare, these will all be service workers. Women in the workforce, 29% of the workforce consisted of, 29% of women were in the workforce in 1960, compared to 60% in 2000. So we've had obviously a huge increase in the last 40 years. Well, 60 years now. I think it's some updated numbers. It has decreased since then, and now it's about 57%. Again, this is women in the workforce, and obviously maybe this is a little bit of a way from women now having jobs, and we've got two people working from home. It used to be the ideal situation, and I look at the 1950s and 60s and think about TV shows back then. One of my favorites is Donna Reed show. I saw it on Nickelodeon. And you have the idea that here's Donna Reed at home in the dress, got an apron on, she's cooking in the kitchen, and the husband comes home and she gives him a kiss, hands him a newspaper. He sits down, takes his shoes off, the kids are playing nicely by the fireplace, and she goes back and finishes the meal for the night. That's not the case anymore. Two people are usually working in the home, woman and husband, man and wife, whatever, spouses are working in their jobs, usually coming home then, and it's a lot different than it was back then, back in the 50s and 60s. And I think that attributes to the women in the workforce, and the women are out working and definitely having that opportunity as well. Different skill levels I want to talk about. So unskilled person is somebody that has no specialized training. Waiting tables, assembly line, custodial, these would all be unskilled level jobs. I don't know, I think waiting tables would be a pretty skilled job myself. I don't know that I could do that. I would probably forget many things. I've worked on an assembly line while I was in high school and college, and that definitely is very little skill. You can learn that pretty quick. Semi-skilled would take some training. A nurse's aide would be an example of a semi-skilled. Skilled worker would be ones that learned a trade or craft, such as police officers, electricians. These would be skilled workers. And then professionals, they're categorized as those that have college degrees. Teachers, architects, accountants would all fill on the professional skill level there. And obviously, to get these skills and knowledge, you need that education. So here's an income comparison by state. 5 states with the highest median incomes: Connecticut, New Jersey, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire. You notice anything geographically about these 5 with the highest median incomes? I'm sure all of you have said that they're all on the East Coast, and that would be correct. Yeah, they all are on the East Coast. They have the highest median or middle incomes in the United States. The 5 states with the lowest median incomes, you have Montana, Louisiana, Arkansas, West Virginia, and Mississippi. Other than Montana, the other 4 would be considered southern states, having the lowest median incomes. Now, why is this? Why do we have this big discrepancy between the highest being on the East Coast, lowest being in the South? There could be a lot of different factors that go into that. And the factors that might be considered in some of those differences there, differences in your skill levels, okay, so maybe that education. Difference in jobs, obviously. So again, when you're looking at your different wages and salaries compared to other people, you look at this and you want to look at maybe the jobs that they're doing. Maybe so-and-so is getting more money than me. Well, why is that? Well, maybe they have different skill abilities. Maybe they have different jobs that they're doing. The location is different. Obviously, if you live on the East Coast, you're going to make more money than you will in the South or the Midwest. Now, you also have a higher living wage as well. Another reason people might make more money than others is experience. Another, education and training. You know, what education do you have? What specialized training do you have? I remember that, I was a certified forklift operator when I worked at Lewis Rich. So then when I went to Menards to work in college, that gave me a 25-cent or quarter boost salary because I was already a forklift certified operator, and therefore they didn't have to train me for that. And I got a little more wage than maybe the guy next to me. And then good timing would be another factor in your wage and salary. Minimum wage, this is going to be a topic we're going to talk about here for a couple of days. It's a federal law that sets the lowest legal hourly wage rate that may be paid to certain types of workers. And as you see on the next few slides, it's going to vary by state, and it's going to vary as the times that we've had this minimum wage come about. And as we get into labor legislation and labor unions, we'll really talk about the minimum wage and how they have probably helped out the minimum wage. So here are the state minimum wages. Notice Iowa is 7.25. That is the federal minimum wage as well. You look at the bottom there, down here, equal to federal minimum wage. So you see that our state law is equal to that. Notice that Oregon's at $10.75, Washington's $11.50, Vermont $10.50. Lowest down here, Montana $4, Wyoming $5.15. There's a lot that goes into minimum wage. It could be the fact that counties could be different. I know Johnson County here in Iowa, they pay $10 for a minimum wage, where Muscatine County pays $7.25. I know I had a couple students the last couple of years that worked at Hy-Vee, one in Muscatine, one in Iowa City, and we started talking about this, and they were shocked that they had $3 difference just by driving 20 minutes either way, and that's definitely the case. So here's the federal minimum wage. Notice the effective date, January 1 of 1979. It was only $2.90, and so in the last 40 years, it's only gone up to $7.25. 30 years actually by that chart there, but that's absolutely amazing that it's only $7.25. And you'll see when we watch a video about how to live on minimum wage, how difficult it really may be to live on that minimum wage. Obviously, if you go back to the budget exercise we did, you could also think about that as, how difficult it was. I gave you $10 an hour at that point. Think about how bad it'd be at $7.25. And this is a kind of historical chart here about minimum wage through the years. Might be tough to see. And then lastly, I want to talk about today is job discrimination. Job discrimination is the practice of favoring one person over another for reasons that have nothing to do with the ability to perform a job. Okay? So it may be you may be discriminated against by the race, by religion, by gender. These all could be ways that you're discriminated against, and that is illegal. That job's age could be another one, age discrimination, and that is illegal. You can't be favored over another person because of several the discrimination part.